All right, looks like we're live. So, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Wisdom and Grit. My goal with this show is to introduce you to the men of impact who build the world and create lives of impact so that we can celebrate them and work together to fulfill the call of masculinity in our homes, our communities, and the world. I'm your host today, Corey Huddleston, and in this episode, we're going to deconstruct how to build mutually beneficial relationships with powerful people, among many other things. And today's guest is one of the most well-connected and influential people that I know personally. And for most of his professional career, he had a life as an extremely fascinating and flourishing career, working with some of the most well-known names in the personal development industry, including his business partner of 18 years, friend and mentor, Jim Rohn, as well as Og Mandino, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Darren Hardy, Robbins, Sharma, and many others. By the way, Robbins Sharma, I just saw that guy for the first time the other day, and I was totally blown away by his content. Super cool guy. As he has built an influencer empire, which eventually he sold in 2007. And after taking a break to spend quality time with his family, he has since gone on to help mainstream influencers build impactful personal brands through high-end coaching and consulting in his Inner Circle Mastermind. He's the founder of Jim Rohn International, YourSuccessStore.com, Lessons From Network, and KyleWilson.com. So please, help me in welcoming my friend, Kyle Wilson. Kyle, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Hey, thanks, Corey. And I like the intro. You took some of mine and took some of yours, and I like what you did with it. You'll have to send that to me.
I will, absolutely, man. No, it's easy to do when I was looking through your stuff. But the problem was really kind of sifting through and figuring out what I couldn't just based on time because you've done so much.
I'm glad you mentioned Robin Sharma, though, because Robin, most people don't know him, and I actually coached him 2012. And he had sent me his manuscript, the monk who sold his Ferrari back in 2002. But then, I'd sold my companies, I was retired, and he reached out. And so I worked with him for, 6 months and have watched him just really do amazing things. He's an amazing guy.
That's incredible. Yeah, I literally just came across him, I think yesterday or the day before. And I didn't know anything about him prior to that. And now I'm like, man, where's this guy been all my life? Cool stuff. So there's so many places we could dive in, and I know you've kind of been the master of architecting, powerful relationships with some of the really, as we mentioned, Jim Rohn, a lot of those people. Inside of that, let's start out with kind of just where all of this started for you, because you've had this illustrious career and working with these people. How did that come to play?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town. If you're from Texas,
yeah,
you know it, Vernon, Texas.
Oh yeah,
11,000.
On the way to Amarillo, which is where I'm from.
Exactly, halfway between Dallas and Amarillo, and actually never went to college. In my first little real business, I mean, I've been working ever since I was young, but my first real business was a detail shop that turned into a service station. So you maybe stopped at Wilson's Texaco along the way.
Probably so, yeah.
Yeah, by the time I'm 22, I had 10 employees. We were 24/7. We called it America Station. And, but then I found out that employees sometimes, especially in a cash business, will take money. And I was a very trusting lad. And but eventually, age 26, I sold my house, sold my business, moved to Dallas in search of a wife, I think is kind of really what it was. Yeah. And I started another little business. And within 2 years, Corey, I went to a seminar and the guy was hiring, and I'd hit a wall with this recent entrepreneurial business I started. So I went to work for him promoting seminars, which meant you would cold call on companies, 100 calls a day. Ron White, same thing Ron used to do, same business. Same thing Tony Robbins actually did for Jim Rohn in those early days. You cold call companies and you book yourself to go speak, and you give a 30-minute talk, and then you sell tickets to an event. And little did I know, 6 months after that would lead to me working with Jim Rohn. And the guy I went to work for started promoting Jim, and he'd gone way back to the Tony Robbins days. And then eventually I started my own company. I traveled around the country, and I would hire Jim, hire Brian Tracy, hire Og Mandino, get a couple of thousand people in a room. You go into Chicago, not know anyone. And in 90 days, you got to have 2,000 people. So that's a whole story in itself. But that led to me making Jim an offer in 1993. Him and his partner split up. And I said, hey, Jim, you're the best speaker in the world. I'm a pretty good promoter. I'll make you a deal you can't refuse, which meant it was actually going to be my company and I would pay for everything because his partnerships had not done too well. And we had a little handshake in that first year. Took him from 20 dates at 4,000 to 110 dates at 10,000, then 25,000. Then I also started working with Brian Tracy and Dennis Waitley and many others. Started Your Success Store, and from there, created a lot of products, sold a lot of books, millions of books. And then when the internet came, was one of the first guys on board and built a 1 million+ list. Ended up selling it all in late 2007, which wasn't bad timing actually. And but I did it for personal reasons, and had some young kids, and just one of those things that just seemed like the right thing to do. And
because we want to build people, right? So
well, when you have 20 employees, I think what happened to me was a combination of things. It was some very personal things, combined with 20 employees, and I was the agent for Jim Rohn, Dennis Waitley, Chris Widener, Ron White, all these speakers, and I thought I'm being pulled in so many directions. I was definitely the rainmaker for our company, filling up huge rooms, creating products. And when you're filling up rooms and you have a 1 million+ list, everyone's knocking on the door, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants a piece. And I just felt I needed to, specifically my family, I needed to be available. And so when I sold the company, it was a very deliberate, intentional knowledge that I'm probably done for life. This took too long to build. It was 25 years and a lot of hard work, a lot of mistakes, a lot of hard knocks. And we had it booming and life couldn't have been better. So when I sold it, I kind of knew I was done. And I was going to go more into investments and real estate. And then, of course, 2008 happened. And I sat on the sideline and just really did the family thing, and got the itch after my 5-year non-compete ended. And so that's, I've since met you and back on the place.
And, what I love about what you've done is you've had the opportunity. We've kind of talked prior to now on the show, whatever, but that you had worked with guys like Tony Robbins. I mean, he didn't, and I didn't know that he actually worked for Jim Rohn, helping promote his seminar. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, his first 2 years, he was 19, and I didn't actually work with Tony. I know Tony, but I didn't work with him. But he was 19 and went to work for Jim back during, there were other guys, Don Hobbs, Jim Brett, several other people that went on to be great speakers. And then I would compete against Tony like 92, 91, 92, 93. He was just really taking off, and I was really good friends with all his team. And, we both shared the stage at Jim's memorial service in 2010. Jim passed away in December 6, 2009. But Tony now is just really, just has gotten so huge and done amazing things.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I would love to dive into that a little bit later, because really the superpower that you bring to the table is in marketing and promoting. And right, would you say that's true?
Yeah, no, Jim was a philosopher. And that's why Jim and I, although I had a lot of relationships, Chris Widener, Ron White, Dennis Waitley. But the reason I think, the reason Jim and I had such a special marriage was he was a pure philosopher. Brian Tracy's also a good marketer. Mark Victor Hansen's a good marketer. Darren Hardy's a good marketer. And I coached Darren and worked with Darren and actually helped the guys that bought my company bought Success. And I had started a company called TSTN while I still had my companies, and had brought Darren in to be the CEO. And then Darren, we shifted him to Success to be the publisher during that transition of them buying me. But Jim, though, was a pure philosopher, and I was the pure marketer, and it was just a great relationship. And, I tried to really carry the Jim Rohn mystique. There's a lot of things we didn't do. I tried to always make sure we handled things classy and in Jim's style. But, if it'd been up to Jim, he wouldn't have done any promotion. Like he would say, Kyle, fortune over fame. And I'm like, Jim, fame helps with the fortune. And so tension of, how do I get his message out? And I was fortunate to be able to be very successful at doing that. And, have watched so many people like Darren Hardy, like Eric Worre, like so many people that saw Jim Rohn for the first time at one of my events that have gone on to do amazing things and give Jim so much credit. I think Jim's bigger than he's ever been. Obviously, that's the internet, social media, but I think the main reason is there are so many students out there that quote Jim Rohn, in particular Darren and Tony and Eric, and then of course to a lesser level the Brenda Bouchards and Tim Ferrisses still give Jim love. And so it's a good day to have Jim Rohn's 18-year business partners part of your resume, right? Because Jim has just grown so much.
That's awesome. So in that, so he's influenced so many people, and some of the biggest names like Tony Robbins and all those guys, and you've worked alongside those guys. You were doing the work, and I've had this situation before where I've come alongside like an influencer or something like that, and kind of been the guy kind of getting stuff done on the back end. And when that happens, a lot of times it's really easy to kind of take for granted who you're standing next to, and that the mystique is there, but it's not, right? Because you're kind of there making all the wheels. You're making the magic on the back end. Did you ever run into that in this situation with Jim?
That's really that's a great question, and most people wouldn't even have that awareness. And I got to tell you, that was one of my strengths. Is Jim changed my life, like literally changed my life. Yeah. But I wasn't there for the party. I mean, I was there to build a company, build a business, reach millions of people. And so whether it was Jim or Les Brown or Brian Tracy or Mark Victor Hansen, and I worked with all those guys and I promoted them all, because what I did is with Jim, we got him, his schedule was packed, and then I started Your Success Story. So it's like once when someone would reach out, I would then book Brian Tracy or book Les Brown. Yeah. Or if they bought all of Jim's stuff, I started selling Brian Tracy's stuff. And so that's why I started Your Success Story. And I think one of my strengths was I wasn't I wasn't sitting there trying to be a groupie. And I watched so many people do that. And yes, it works, but you and I talked in the past about influence. And to me, one of the things about influence is results. So I was a very results-driven person. Yeah. I didn't try and network. I'm not a good networker. We're talking about relationships. My foundation for relationships is bring value. And if I can't bring value, I'm not going to typically waste someone's time. And so I didn't get too caught up in that, like most people. In fact, I was really bad about taking pictures. I didn't put myself on stage. I didn't insert myself into the conversation. I just filled rooms, created products, and I was collecting the money because it was my company, and I would pay royalties and such out. And, we were creating something that impacted a lot of people. And I think that was the thing I was really into. And at times there were conflicts because I was, the guy having to say, hey, Jim, I just printed 5,000 books that I need signed, right? Or, hey, I've got you booked in Fargo in February. I remember saying, never book me in Fargo again. And I can appreciate that for sure. Yeah. I was kind of the guy at times making Jim's life a little bit uncomfortable.
That's funny. Well, no, I mean, because I think that's pretty typical on the way. Just to kind of sidetrack a little bit, I saw this. It was a meme of Elvis and his manager. And apparently there was some kind of a concert that he had walked out of or something, and all these people were out protesting the Elvis. And so he went and sold them some I Hate Elvis pins, the manager of Elvis Presley. And I'm just sitting there going like, oh my God, that's an entrepreneur for sure, man. But I don't know, if that starts crossing some boundaries at some point,
that was Colonel Tom Parker, who really was like this, the circle. Anyway, he's got an amazing story and reputation for all the things he did. Yeah, I was just in Toronto with Robert Alt. Robert's the founder of Olay Music. Okay. Signed Rush, signed Beyonce, Taylor Swift. Wow. The next book I'm doing called Don't Quit. And we spent the day and we were talking about that. It's one of the hardest things of being a manager. And so for me, I'm so picky about who I work with. I've had too many situations where you have a loose cannon, or you have someone that you can't trust to be on time. Those are deal breakers. I don't care. In fact, one of the best pieces of relational advice I have in business advice, and it came from Zig Ziglar, and it's part of my 52 lessons I learned from Jim Rohn and other legends. It's something we'll talk about later, right?
Yeah.
Zig said, never do a good deal with a bad guy. And that has saved me so much time, saved me from business divorces. I've never sued anyone. I've never personally been sued. I've had my team members sued. I've had people I work with that I represent sued, and they came after me because I was the one selling all the product. But personally, I haven't. And part of it is you just walk away. And there's some prominent people in the personal development space that, you know, I watched and observed. It's like, you know, it's just not worth the heartache or the headache. And of course, Robert being in the music industry, you know, he worked with Timberland and all these different artists, right? And he's like, you know, it's a challenge. You have to have someone attached at the hip the whole time.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. Especially in music, just because of what traditionally, what in the rock world anyway, I don't know about like in the hip hop world, but in the rock world, you know, where you think of guys like Nikki Sixx, right? And they're like throwing TVs through windows and stuff like that. And I'm like, I can't even imagine having to deal with that as a manager.
Yeah, I would not want to be the manager. And so, you know, there's attorneys, there's agents, there's the publishers, there's all those. But the worst job is the manager. He's got to deal with it all. And he's the one who gets the 2 o'clock call in the morning. And for me, I was all of it. I was the agent, the manager. I was the one putting on the events. I was negotiating. Wow. We did. But it was great. Jim Rohn was my partner. Doesn't get any better than that. And yes, I had a lot of other, like I said, Dennis Waitley and Ron and Chris and these guys. But Jim was really the inflow of the most people we reached, and then I would just cross-pollinate.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that brings me to my next point. So a lot of the relationships that you have outside of your tremendous work ethic and the results that you provide, a lot of those came as a result of proximity, right, to some of the key players. And I understand that, and I totally get that mindset. And this is what I really want people listening here today to understand, is how to really develop those kind of relationships, because not everybody's going to have an opportunity to come and work with a Jim Rohn, right, or something like that, where they're automatically going to be put in front of some key players. And not to say that was all that happened for you to be able to do that, but what would you like? Well, first of all, do you think it's possible for someone to build kind of a network, if you will, like you have, without having proximity to someone like that in the beginning?
You know, it comes down to, you know, Jim Rohn had a quote. I always say, I could list 100, but when I do talks at companies, I always say 4 things that changed my life that I learned from Jim Rohn. And the 4th one is, if you want to be successful, learn to bring value to the marketplace. If you want to be wealthy, learn to be valuable to valuable people. And part of that is creating a platform. And so, again, I have people in my world that always want to get on my events, but they don't do their own events. Right? So they haven't learned to become valuable back.
Okay.
I'm saying, find ways to create platforms. So the platforms I have, and you've been to one of my inner circle masterminds, and then I do, you know, like these books, right, that hit #1. And what I do is, with the books, people pay to be part of the book, and they get all kinds of, you know, great things. But I also have some celebrity authorities, you know, 7-time Emmy winner Nui Scruggs, #1 podcast Robert Helms, Robert Alt, who I mentioned. So for those guys, why would they do it? Well, again, I've created a platform for them to be on, where I'm going to talk about them. We're going to publicize them. So there are some people that pay, and there's some people that, you know, get the benefit of my platform. So for example, if you do events, you need that healthy combination of people that are supporting you and get to come and benefit from what you're putting on. But if you can get enough people to come to what you're putting on, you've now become valuable to an influencer that says, yes, I want to speak to your audience. And again, no one wants to be on a podcast or go speak at an event if there's no one in the audience.
Right.
You have to be able to build an audience first. And so it's this healthy combination. And so for me, I got the skill set early on how to fill rooms. Now, it was not easy. I had to go do 100 calls a day, to book meetings, to go speak, to talk sometimes to audiences that didn't want to hear me. And, and it was a numbers game, and I got really good at getting referrals and, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Where I could fill up a room, and then we would do sponsorships with advertising. But now you're filling up an audience. Of course, any speaker, they're knocking your doors down to get in front of 2,000 people to get paid and to sell their products. And so I would say most of the people, like, you've been to my website, right? There's Phil Collins, the Def Leppard. There's all these people, Robbins, Sharma, Darren Hardy. Most of them came to me, if I'm being really candid, because I created a platform that brought value to valuable people. So that's the missing ingredient. Most people think networking's the key. To me, networking, I get suspicious of people that just want to text me and call me just to connect.
Point taken. I won't do that anymore. No, I'm just playing with it.
Problem, but but I think, like with Phil Collins, I'm flying out to Los Angeles to meet with him this Saturday. Phil Collins, the Def Leppard, right?
Yeah.
He sold 100 million albums. He's a big deal. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame recently. We've never exchanged dollars. He's done masterminds at my house. I've helped him film a thing called Rockstar Fitness, and we just bring value to each other. But the key is it's not all just warm, fuzzy, let me waste your time, Phil. I have to figure out how to bring value. Now, in that is where you get to know each other, and you say, wow, Phil's amazing, Kyle's amazing. I want to work with this guy some more. I like his philosophy. He's a giver. He brings value. Right. That's where it happens. I don't have to have coffee to figure out, I don't have to spend an hour with someone to see if that's going to take us somewhere. They can present something, and I say, yeah, that's something interesting, and let's pursue that. But I think that's a mistake a lot of people make when they pursue valuable people, like a Darren Hardy or Phil Collins, is they don't realize how many opportunities these guys get bombarded with.
Yeah.
So to get their attention, you have to bring value to it. Now, after you have the relationships, it changes. I sold my companies. When I sold my companies, I didn't have 1 million plus list anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't have events I was doing. I didn't have a team of 20 people. But, Brian Tracy would still take my call. He's endorsed the last 8 books I've put out because we did build that relationship. But if I was trying to start out doing that, that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, that's good. Speaking of books, what do you have on your bookshelf back there?
Yeah, so actually, this in my my library, I have a pretty cool library, about 10,000 books.
Oh, wow.
Years, just shelves that are signed books. But this back here, it's hard to see, but it's hundreds of different products I created, executive produced. Dennis Waite, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Ron White, Chris Widener, different people. And then back that way are just some of these recent books we've done called Passionistas, Desire, Discipline, Determination, One Thing That Changed Everything. And those are compilation books where we have 20 to 30 authors, celebrity authorities, and we help people really tell their story. And the main thing is I teach them how to market, and they also become a #1 best-selling author. Yeah. So that's something kind of cool we've been doing the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's interesting. So inside of that, you're not only helping them produce that book, but you're coming alongside them and then walking them through the art of personal marketing and branding.
Yeah, we do 8 group calls. We have a one-on-one coach, a one-on-one editor. It really has probably been, it's almost like 70% referral now. It's like
cool.
have people have been in multiple books, and again, NFL, Major League Baseball players, the whole thing.
Yeah. So hold on. Somebody was writing here that the 12 Pillars, written by Jim Rohn and Chris Widener, was the first book that he ever read in its entirety, and it changed his whole line of thinking.
I love that. So I actually consigned that book to happen. I said,
wow.
Chris, we need to connect you with Jim. And so it was Chris's blueprint for the book. But that was something we were very intentional about. How do we align Chris with Jim to help, Jim or Chris to tag along, right?
Yeah.
Jim Rohn Influence. And that was a great book. Chris did a great job with that book. And I sold a lot of those books. I use my books as viral marketing tools.
Yeah.
You saw my little Jim Rohn quote book, right?
I actually have that right here.
Yeah, awesome. Right? Thank you. I did one for Zig, did one for Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley. And so when I did like 12 Pillars and 5 Major Pieces by Jim, Seasons of Life, I would use those similarly as a business card and a lead gen, and people would buy 100 at a time. I suspect the 12 Pillars book they refer to, someone gave it to them, because I would really train people how they could buy 100 for a couple of bucks and give them away. People say, "Oh, you're selling them for too cheap, Kyle." I'm like, they're a business card. They have our catalog, and it introduces people to Jim. Like that little quote book, that was an idea I had in 1993, like a God download. And I could see no one's just going to throw a quote book at someone. They're going to give it to someone and say, "Have you ever heard of Jim Rohn?" And they would read some of the quotes, and they would hand it to them. It had a to and from and a place to write notes. And again, like in 93, Jim didn't have quotes and there was no Google, but it was like, that was his secret sauce. Jim was a wordsmith and so profound. So I created this. I went through all the seminars and came up with 365 quotes. It went in a hardbound book. The little excerpt booklet, I would sell them 10 for $10 or 100 for $65. We teach people how to go give them away.
Yeah.
And again, same thing with these books now. We teach people how to be in a book with Jim Rohn's 18-year business partner, with 7-time Emmy winner, 2-time Grammy winner, the different people we have in them, and then use that as a business card to go give away. And we just have amazing testimonials of how people have leveraged the book with it.
I think that's interesting how you're talking about teaching people how to give them away. I mean, it seems so, like, okay, I just go put it in somebody's hands, but it's amazing how few people really know intuitively how to do that, or they're thinking it's got to be bigger than that. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it really is about connecting the dots and the storytelling. I did Chicken Soup for the Entrepreneur Soul with Mark and Jack.
Yeah.
We started in 96. It didn't come out till like 2000, but they were the masters at telling stories. They would get up and tell stories out of a book. And so we teach people how to tell stories. I did a recent talk a few weeks ago, and I mentioned Robbins, Sharma. I mentioned Phil Collin of Def Leppard. I mentioned Todd Stoudemire, 15-year Major League Baseball player. I mentioned Jim Rohn. And at the break, one guy came up, said, "I'm the biggest Def Leppard fan." Someone else, "I'm the biggest Jim Rohn fan." Someone said, "Love Darren Hardy." Another person, "Oh, I watched the Blue Jays win the championship in '93 with Todd." And I intentionally put out hooks, right? Yeah. Same thing with the book. If you're talking to an audience or you're sitting on an airplane with someone, and they say, "Hey, what do you do?" I'm like, "Do you know who Jim Rohn is?" And if they do, I teach people to say, "Yeah, I'm in a book with his 18-year business partner." Or do you know? If they don't, say, "Well, do you?" And I kind of go by. I use common sense. If they're 60 and they're from Dallas, I say, "Do you know who Zig Ziglar is?" Right. Right. If they're 30 and they got an earring, I say, "Do you know who Seth Mosley is?" He's a Grammy winner. But I find ways to connect the dots, and then I tie it back to my association with that person through the book I'm in. And I do it all the time. I got one story I got to share with you. Yeah, do it. Okay, because we met through Ron White. So I'm on an airplane going to Scottsdale, and sitting across from me is John Daniels of the Texas Rangers. Wow. He's a huge Texas Rangers fan. Yeah. Yeah, if anyone knows who John Daniels is, they know he's pretty dry. He's pretty analytical. He's not chatty, and I'm not either. But I take a picture of him. I'm sitting across, take a picture of him, and I'm going to send it to Ron White and just say, "Hey, I'm sitting by John Daniels. You want me to ask him anything?" Because for those of you who don't know, Ron's the biggest Texas Ranger fan. He also has baseball talk on Facebook with 200,000 people. He's a big baseball, or huge Ranger fan, season ticket holder. And then the flight attendant comes up and asks me a question. So my phone is on my leg while they come up. And then when they walk away, I see him leaning over, looking at my phone with his picture on it. And I think I was snapping it to Ron. And he goes, "Who are you sending that to?" Like, very cut and dry. Wow. Now, so I'm sent to Ron White. He's the biggest Texas Ranger fan. He does the Afghanistan memory wall. He's the 2-time U.S. memory champion, and just nothing, right? Yeah. And then I quickly transitioned. And I said, and also Newey Scruggs, who's a really good friend of mine, and he's in a book I'm doing. He goes, "Oh, Newey's a great guy." I said, so he reached out. I'm John Daniels. I'm Kyle Wilson. Then 10 minutes later, I get a text message, and it's Newey. And he said, John Daniels just said, do I know this Kyle Wilson?
Wow.
Said, yeah. He's
checking you out.
So about 30 minutes later, he reaches back over, says, why are you going to Scottsdale? And from there, I got to come back to the original reason I was doing it. I said, my good friend Ron White does this Afghanistan memory wall. He's done it for the Diamondbacks. He's done it for Major League Baseball, NASCAR, the NFL. He's done it the mall in Washington, D.C. on July 4th. But he wants to do it for the Rangers. That's his team. And he said, man, would love to have him. And he gave me a contact info. So what that came from was me connecting the dots with, it wasn't Kyle, it wasn't Jim Rohn, and it wasn't Ron White, it was Newey Scruggs. That was the connection. And I have a book, and I gave him a book with me and Newey in it. It's one like a book like this, and there's Newey right there, right? And so I teach people just, again, how to connect the dots in those different ways. I've done talks in front of groups where I would mention a story about a girl who'd been bullied as a kid, right? And that connects the dots. So it doesn't always have to be business or success. It's just finding who you're talking to, your audience, and connecting the dots, whether it's one-on-one. Give you another quick example. Spoke 2 or 3 months ago in Washington, D.C. 200 people. And I told 4 stories out of a book, and they were all really high social proof type stories, right?
Yeah.
And I said, and then I mentioned other stories in the book. And I said, if you want a copy, just get your phone out and text me your name and your email. And I gave them, at least a minute to do it.
Yeah.
And people were kind of staring at me, and I'd say, listen, it's a really good book, over 30 powerful stories on resilience. Nathan Ogden, who's quadriplegic. I tell these stories, and then I think like 180 people out of 200 did that, right?
Wow.
And at the end, and so I send them the PDF of the book, the ebook, for free, and they're on my list now. But then at the end of my talk, I say, listen, I'm in the back of the room. I brought books. I'll sign them. They're $15 each for signed copy. And then I put my collateral in the book. So now it's a business card. So again, it's using a book to build a list, to build an audience, to build a tribe. But you can still also sell the books, right?
Yeah. So you were talking a minute ago about kind of sitting down in front of, what was his name? Daniels, his first name?
Yeah, John.
John Daniel, yeah. So, and kind of like to some degree, in that particular situation, it wasn't as what would be seen as name dropping. And people have all of these different things, right? And I'm with you on that topic. And so I really want to touch base on this because there's so many people out there who are like, oh, I'm not going to name drop and I'm not going to do this. And I think there's a difference between how you and I might do it versus how, somebody who's just walking around name dropping literally or whatever, and how do you draw the line there? Then when is it beneficial? When is it not? When is it good? When is it not?
Great question. So it has to be purposeful. There has to be a reason. And I have the John Daniels story, Corey, I have at least 5 of those. I have Resnick of the Goo Goo Dolls. I got Tommy Shaw of Styx, multiple stories. Frank Carossi, who directed The Waterboy. And each one of them have this element of I have to have my phone ready showing I'm at Phil Collins, Def Leppard's house filming, and then I swipe and the next picture is him at my house doing a mastermind, and then Tommy Shaw of Styx is like, yeah, Phil's the best human being because they just toured, right?
Yeah.
If I didn't
That's super cool.
If I had just said that, it wouldn't have worked. But from there, we talked the whole flight. He gave me his contact info. He's maybe going to be part of a project I'm doing next year, kind of a celebrity-driven book thing. I name drop only because it works. Now, listen, I've been on a lot of airplanes. I've that card maybe twice because it was purposeful, right?
Yeah.
It was Tommy Shaw. It was Johnny Resnick. Johnny Resnick of the Goo Goo Dolls. Like, wow, Phil, can you connect me with him? He is in shape. Google Phil Collins if you haven't.
Oh, yeah.
He's ripped. He's vegan, 28 years, no drinking. And we did this thing called Rockstar Fitness together that I produced. And so it's got to be purposeful. So you have to check your ego. It's not to say, hey, I've spent time with these guys. It's to, we talked before we jumped on the call and you said, hey, I wouldn't mind you jumping into some marketing stuff. and thinking about valuable relationships. And I told you, I'm not the greatest at relationships when it comes to like a pastor, someone that really is relationship driven. But I am really good at bringing value to, prospects, customers, and key people. And then my core relationships are my family and my closest friends, right?
Yeah.
I won't seek out a lot of relationships beyond that, just because a lot of mine comes in my business world. A lot of my, my plate's pretty full. Just I have such quality people in my business world.
Yeah.
One go build outside of those two worlds, close friends and family, and then business.
That's something I've had to learn in my life too over the last few years, because I used to be more of a networker, right? And I knew a lot of people, but then I was like, well, I really want to focus on a core group of people that are high quality and building that out. And so that's what I've been doing more. When you talked about value to key people, and and that's something you're really good at and all that, do you think that that's teachable? Like being able to, yeah.
And back to your last statement, it's just not scalable. If someone has time for everyone, that's just not scalable.
Right.
It speaks volumes to where are they getting all this time? Because now again, different people are wired differently. I'm not here to judge anyone.
Sure.
I just know when you're really out there, you can't be all things to all people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so of course it's teachable, and it's just learning to connect the dots. And I have multiple stories on that. And here's what it absolutely gets down to: how much influence do you want to have? So I can think of 3 people off the top of my head. One's Tim Cole, 31-year colonel in the Marines. You met Tim, right?
Oh yeah, amazing guy. Like one of the nicest dudes.
Brian Tracy 3-day event I put on.
I was, yeah.
So Tim was one of the speakers.
Yeah.
And so was Seth Mosley, 2-time Grammy winner, and Seth is another example. But we'll stay on Tim. Tim, ran 2 presidential inaugurations. He's 31-year colonel in the Marines. He's the guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely humble, absolutely just the best human being.
He is.
And so him, like many of us, has a challenge putting himself out there on social media, putting himself out there in front of a group. And it was actually an event I did that Ron White showed up at, and Ron found out who Tim was. He's like, guys, I don't want to be rude, but we got a 31-year colonel in the Marines in the room. And I think we need to, recognize that. And again, Tim was very, shy. And so just watching him come out of his shell, and part of it was telling the story in the book. He's been in 2 of my books, but having to own our story. And I think what happens, I always tell people, when we diminish ourselves, the only question to ask is, how much influence do I want to have? If I'm sitting here worried about being judged by people thinking I'm being cocky or whatever, well, those same people, I'm probably not going to impact anyway. But there's someone else that needs to own their story. There's someone else that needs to put themselves out there. There's someone else that, again, I couldn't tell you the John Daniels story if I didn't mention Newey. I couldn't tell you the Tommy Shaw story if I didn't mention Phil Collin. And so I'm willing to put myself out there for the result. I think with our ego, it's counterintuitive. It's our ego that has us diminish ourselves. We don't want to be judged.
Yeah.
We don't want people thinking stuff. Well, they're going to think it anyway. So the reality is we're all going to be judged. And so you just got to realize, okay, when you're John Mayer, you're going to have half the people that don't like you, even though he's a phenomenal musician, phenomenal songwriter, phenomenal guitar player, but half the people don't like him for whatever reason. But I think he's actually very authentic. He's trying to please people. And when we're in people-pleasing mode, it's usually our ego that's wanting to, make sure we don't, that people don't judge us. Now, for me personally, I don't get in political or spiritual debates. I don't do any of that. I'm not here to be right or defend anything. Right. But I do want to own my story. And so I used to even be shy about talking about me and Jim Rohn. I would think people are, thinking I'm trying to insert myself into a conversation. But at the end of the day, I'm limiting the influence I can have. And then when you get people telling you you are making a difference, you are helping them, you're helping them step out from fear into owning their own story. It's like, okay, that's who I'm here to help.
Yeah. So have you ever come across, and I love that, by the way, in fact, I was literally about to ask that about how do you talk to people who are like terrified to put themselves out there, or they think of it as some egomaniacal thing. So you answered that on point. Have you ever met someone who you were intimidated by, or are you pretty much on equal grounds along the way?
Oh, no, I'm definitely intimidated. Might not be the right word, but yeah, I definitely don't feel worthy or I have anything of value to bring. And there are a lot of invitations I get to meet certain people that I don't feel like I'm ready for that. I don't have any value to bring, so I don't want to play that card yet.
Interesting.
But yeah, if I met someone like on an airplane, that's what's happened to me multiple times, I will give it a shot. I got to tell you, every time it's worked to date, but there's other times, in other situations, it's not, where they think, okay, I don't care. And if they don't care, I don't care either. It doesn't matter. But you never know until you talk to someone if there's a connection.
Yeah.
And I typically kind of have a feeling, okay, there's something here. But I got to tell you this, Lisa Hayes is in my next book. Her husband's Hansen, the creator of 2.5 Men and the Big Bang Theory. And
that's crazy.
To my inner circles in Los Angeles at their home. And I've been to some of her parties, and there are some big people there that I really had zero desire to meet. So I didn't do any photos with them. I didn't try and meet them because I just didn't feel like that was something, there was a connection. And sometimes I will let it come to me. And, but no, I can think of people you would know their name in our space right now that I've met. And, I mentioned Jim Rohn, and we do a photo, but we don't necessarily become friends. Brendan Bouchard's one, Russell Brunson's one. We'll talk for 1 minute.
Yeah.
I know it's not going to go any further, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It's totally cool. I'm glad to, in that case, be a fan or, but oftentimes I am looking for more than just,
Right. Well, you're so on purpose about how you build these relationships, even more so as I'm diving in and I'm starting to see how you operate here because, and I don't know if it's just a sign of how the times are or whatever, but a lot of times, we have this intent, or a lot of what's taught is, hey, go get a picture with this guy. And then you're just kind of, famous by association without ever having really brought any value into their life outside of a picture or something like that, which, how do you feel about that, by the way? I mean, it sounds like you're not in it, but I don't know how you think about it.
I try not, the only way I evaluate that is if it comes to something directly related to me working with someone. So when I see pictures of, there's a guy in Los Angeles that posted a picture with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. Yeah. And I thought that was freaking great, right?
Yeah, totally.
He's connected to him or whatever. He was at the right time at the right place. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is neat.
When I know the story and they do insert, hey, I'm hanging with my buddy, and that's a little bit of a fabrication. But honestly, Corey, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It just would matter if they're wanting to work with me and I feel like they're kind of full of hot air. But, I'm all for social proof, and especially if it's said the right way. And one thing, again, here's one way to do it. And for example, Tom Burns, he's a guy I work with. He's been part of my books, part of the inner circle. Okay. He's an orthopedic surgeon, lives in Austin. He's raised $400 million in real estate. Like he is his best friend is Gary Keller, founder of Keller Williams.
Yeah.
And Tom, Robert Plant lived in Austin for 18 years. He goes, oh, I know. He's come to the office. I've treated him.
Dang.
He's like, I don't take pictures. It's like when George Strait comes. I'm like, what? You had Robert Plant and George Strait.
That's crazy, yeah.
But, I get in those situations. But I turned it for him. I said, Tom, here's the thing. Yeah, I agree. We don't want to be that guy. And it's a tricky thing. But if you fill it out and you do take a picture in that situation, here's how you handle it appropriately. When you post, you give them a lot of love. You say, Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin, one of my favorite bands, the nicest human being. It was so awesome.
Yeah.
So that's how if I'm with Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, I was gonna say you've been. So that's my jam right there. I love Robert Kiyosaki. He changed my life in a lot of ways.
Robert multiple times, but when
Yeah.
I post, I give him a lot of love.
Yeah.
So it's not just, hey, look at me. It's talking about them. And then I feel like, who's going to be offended by that? Would Robert be offended? I'm posting a picture with him. I'm talking about how Rich Dad, Poor Dad changed my life.
Right.
So I think that's the way you do it, is you edify them if you're posting with someone.
Yeah. That's super cool. So you've met all these people, all this kind of stuff. I got to ask you, like, has there ever, like, what is the common denominator amongst all people? Like, I mean, I think from the perspective of a lot of people who are not playing in that game, right? They're all kind of looking at like, oh, you know, like they've got something special, or they're this or they're that or whatever, you know, like let's debunk that now, or you can, you know, verify it. I don't know, but like, what is the thing, you know?
If I had to generalize,
right.
Generalize, I would say most are very hardworking. Most are really good people.
Yeah.
You don't last if you don't do things right.
Right. That's a great point there.
Yeah. So most, and again, like Tommy Shaw Sticks, Phil Collins, Def Leppard, Johnny Resnick said, hey, I've been clean and sober for 4 years now. You know, you either figure it out or you get left. So you're not a rock star at 60 and still getting drunk and, you know, having babies all over the country, because it's going to catch up with you. You either figure it out or you don't. And so in the beginning, anything's possible, but people that have stood the test of time, doesn't mean they haven't made mistakes, but they've usually figured it out. And there's these same common principles, hard work. And the other thing I'll say, and again, I'm generalizing, I found there's almost been a Forrest Gump type of story. You start hearing the stories, and they were always at the right place at the right time. And the other thing with musicians, you find out, these songs have been downloads. It's like insane, you know, it's like they're in tune.
Oh, yeah.
They have a connection.
Yeah.
That little quote book, I moved 6 million of those. That quote book made me millions of dollars because people would call and order everything we had. Truly, that was a God download. There was no to and from. That booklet was not a ripoff. I created that booklet as a God download in 1993. That's cool. That literally changed our whole trajectory. And so I'll say there's a little bit of that too. There's a little bit of, you know, whether it's a spiritual connection or just something where they've taken something and they've run with it. Again, a little bit of Forrest Gump almost in every situation, but I'm generalizing. I'm not saying
I got you.
But I would just say that from a distance. They were at the right time. They met the right person. Like, how did I meet Jim Rohn? I can't take credit for that.
Yeah.
One of the fallacies, in my opinion, of long-term goal setting is I could have never, if I was setting goals, I didn't even know who Jim Rohn was. So I couldn't have been a goal. But there were probably a lot of people that set a goal. I want to be the president of Jim Rohn International. Never happened, but I didn't even know who Jim was. So there is a little bit of being in tune with what's happening and just pivoting based on that versus being locked into how we think it should be.
That's interesting. So whenever all that was going down, was there something in your gut that was kind of just driving you to that along the way, like the Jim Rohn International thing?
Yeah, you follow circumstances. I had to leave. I had to leave the company where I met Jim because I wasn't making any money. I had to go start my own company. I had no plan to come back and try and hire Jim one-on-one. I would just hire him like I would hire anyone else.
Right.
Then they had massive, $400,000 in debt, and they broke up. And then I said, well, if you guys are done. And
even that the fact that they broke up and all that, I mean, the timing.
And it took, we're talking over a couple of years, right? So again, and it's like anything, Corey, there is no final destination, right?
Right. Yeah, 100%.
And then Jim Rohn talks about the seasons. There's spring, summer, fall, and winter. And how many times has it skipped a winter? Never. But how many times has it skipped a spring? Never. And so, we're going to have ups, we're going to have downs, as long as you just kind of can enjoy the ride. And that was the hardest thing for me. I always thought there was a destination. And now I'm pretty clear, there's no destination. I got to enjoy the moment. I have to trust God and trust that things are going the direction they're supposed to go. I have to not do good deals with bad people. I have to be able to say no to things that don't feel right. It's all these combinations, but you got to build it, right? In the beginning, I had to build it.
Yeah.
Once you build it, then, the work's done. And I'll say this, I mentioned Russell Brunson and all, there's ClickFunnels. One thing, like with Robin Sharma in 2012, I said, Robin, go build a real company. So many people are out there doing transactional business. So I'm not a believer in just going out and hunting and selling. I want to build something that's going to compound. When you build a real business, it compounds. Yeah. So I try and stay away from having a transactional mentality of selling.
Yeah.
It's not going to compound. So everything I do, I want it to have a compounding effect.
Yeah.
And so again, that's a good philosophical direction for anyone, is avoid. It's like the difference between investing in it's the difference between day trading in the stock market and buying real estate that compounds in value and has cash flow.
Yeah. So how do you convert that in, like with Robin, for example?
You might make money in both ways, but one's not compounding. One's you're starting over every day. It's a transaction. The other has a compounding effect over time. That's how I want to do my business.
That's awesome. I love that advice. With Robin, did he pretty much grasp that? Obviously, I mean, it sounds like he's doing big things, but
at the time he had gone to a big industry event where there were people, I'm not going to say their names, that were, I sold 20 million on stage and I did this and I did that. I'm like, Robin, it's all BS. What most of these people are doing, it's not even their audience. They're speaking at a Peter Lowe event and they're getting a one-time sell, and most of it's crappy product, and they're having to deal with refunds. And I'm like, you really could be the next John Maxwell. Just go do that type of company, but you're going to have to build your infrastructure up. And his next book, anyway, Robin,
the 5 a.m. or whatever.
Well, this was back when he did The Leader with No Title, but Robin went into 3 ponds: entrepreneurship, personal development, and corporate. And that book was very intentional to get his foot in corporate. Anyway, Robin did it right. Darren Hardy did it right. John Maxwell's obviously always done it right. And then I see most of the marketing BS out there right now is very transactional, affiliate, funnel hacking, which is very much hunting versus fishing. My opinion.
I love it.
It's churning through people. And I always say marketing is a combination of tactics and principles. And I believe in tactics. If tactics didn't work, I wouldn't do them. Social media is a tactic, email list are a tactic, podcast are tactics. But never let a tactic override a principle. And principles are having a great product, being consistent, having good service, and being relational.
That is solid. That's wisdom right there. Now you got to add something gritty, and then we can close this bad boy out with where you want to send people.
What's that?
Add like a pearl of some grit. Like you already just gave the wisdom component, so now you can, if you got anything on the grit side about how to get in there and make it happen all of a sudden, then we can close.
So you mean like marketing or business or what?
Yeah, whatever you think. As far as like, how do you like what is something that you would equate to grit, or what does grit mean to you? Maybe that's a better question.
We did a book, the book before last, called Resilience: Turning Your Setback into a Comeback.
Yeah.
And so that would be another common denominator of everyone, that anyone truly successful has learned to be resilient. And I remember I sold my companies, and there was this mentality I went through for a while that every problem I was trying to fix a problem. So I was just, a problem automatically gave me stress. It's like, okay, I gotta fix a problem. Instead of realizing life is full of problems. You're not going to build muscles unless you go lift some weight. You're not going to grow without problems. It's just part of life. And so I think this topic of resilience, and hearing so many successful people, every story was filled with resilience. and people with bigger problems than you and I had to go through, right?
Sure.
So I think that's part of it. I would also say, Jim Rohn said the twin killers of success are impatience and greed. So I think a lot of times people want a vineyard, but they want it to happen in 3 months.
Yeah.
And you just got to realize it's going to take 5 years, but 5 years will come and go. And you're better off having built something than to keep starting over. And so I'm just, again, this big believer in understand how long it's going to take. And there's a lot of BS out there about all these shortcuts.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's true, but you can learn from other people's experience and knowledge. But there are some things, that are going to take time. Relationships are going to take time.
Yeah.
Building your community is going to take time. You don't go build a huge list that has any kind of value overnight. It's going to take time.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's more philosophy. Yeah.
I love it. Kyle, you have absolutely just brought it today. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'd love to have you back for sure. We kind of talked about that, so we can do that at a later date, but talk more about that. But before we go, why don't you tell everybody where they can learn more about you? Because I know that you've got the Lessons From network and some different things like that. So let's let everybody know where they can find out more about that.
Yeah, I think the thing for sure is I have a free book called 52 Lessons I Learned from Jim Rohn and Other Legends. It's got Jim Rohn, Darren Hardy, Brian Tracy, John Maxwell, Zig Ziglar, amazing lessons and stories, and it's free. Just go to kylewilson.com. And also I have a ton of free stuff. You scroll down, you'll see ebooks, interviews with Phil Collin, Brian Tracy, Darren Hardy, lots of free resources. And that's where I also have about my books and Inner Circle and things I do. So it's kylewilson.com.
Yeah, and if you want to find out more inside of that, get on his email list, and he'll keep you up to date with some of the events that you have. That's actually when you had that Brian Tracy event, that was awesome. There was a lot of fun, and just a lot of, still to this day, some friendships and stuff that I made through that have carried on since that time. So it was a
special event. That was the 20-year anniversary of the Success Mastery Academy that Brian and I had created in 1996.
That's cool.
Hardy had come to that event. Vic Johnson had come to that event. So I invited them 20 years later to come speak at it. And so it was Brian, Darren, Vic, Robert Helms, Tim Cole, had 16 different speakers, but it was Brian's 2-day, and then Larry Thompson was there, and it was really an amazing event. Yeah,
there was a lot of wisdom downloaded there for sure. So, well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Kyle, it was amazing. If you guys want to find out more, go to his website, check him out. And guys, we do this every Wednesday inside of the group of Wisdom and Grit on Facebook. And then you can find all of these on YouTube and on iTunes. And share this out with your friends, share this out with people who can capture some of this wisdom, because the Lord knows we need more of this wisdom in the world right now. And we need people kind of coming together around good knowledge and not feeding, off of the swill, if you will, that's out there just kind of circling around. So I appreciate every one of you, and I hope y'all have a great week. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.